Good evening.
Let the record reflect that Clerk Segrist is in attendance. Slavin.
Good evening.
I am here.
Great. Can we have the adoption of the agenda, please? Okay, we're going to wait till our youth group comes for the pledge, so we'll do a couple more things. Can we have adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Segrist, supported by Tanya Ganguly. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes for September 26th?
So moved.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Segrist, supported by Trustee Berninski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Okay, why don't we go ahead with the Pledge of Allegiance? Everybody please stand. Okay, now is the time for public comment on agenda items only. This is where you inform the board of your thoughts on agenda items, and we take them into consideration when we're voting. So agenda items only. I'm looking online first. Anyone on agenda items only, please raise your hand. Okay, I see none. I do not see anyone online for agenda items only. How about here in the room? Agenda items only? No agenda items. Okay, so public comment on agenda items is closed. Can I have a motion to pay the bills?
Madam Supervisor, I motion that we pay the bills.
Support.
Motion made by Treasurer Slavin, supported by Trustee Snyderman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Okay, we don't have our Youth Advisory Council here yet for the swearing-in ceremony. So why don't we start with the presentation of the board goals update. Deputy Supervisor Joseph Huber is going to start us with that. I will share it on my screen also. Okay, I'll paginate it through here. Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Supervisor and board members. Just put together a few slides, kind of updating the board where we're at in terms of the strategic plan that the board put together in early 2021. We've been working diligently on all the goals that the board set for its first term since that time. And this is an update on where we're at in terms of reaching those goals. So go to slide 2. So, no, that's okay. Yeah, so the first kind of value that the board established when y'all took office in 2021 was to set goals to become a welcoming community in Canton. There are a number of action items that the board put under that kind of value for Canton Township. The first was the strengthening of the enforceability of the Human Rights Ordinance. That's been completed. Second was developing a data collection plan to evaluate long-term election resource needs. That's been completed. Third was to employ an embedded social worker to support the police. That's been implemented. Fourth was to create a police transparency and guidance subcommittee. That's been completed by our police chief, Chad Baugh. Fifth, to create a cultural competency training program for staff. We are in the midst of that currently with our DEI initiative here at Canton Township. Sixth was to perform a communication needs assessment. That was completed about 8 months ago by Ref Tellis. Next was to expand multicultural programming and leisure services. That's something that the board has accomplished in its first 2.5 years in office. Next was to expand the juvenile diversion program. The board has accomplished that goal with Police Chief Chad Ball committing more resources to diversion. Next was to create resources in various languages. We've been able to do that through efforts in the clerk's office, the treasurer's office, municipal services, and leisure services, as well as other departments throughout the township. Next was to increase programming to the diverse community that we have here in Canton. That's been accomplished through a number of new events in Canton, including the Diwali event, which has now become an annual event here in Canton. Next was to increase programming in senior services, and that's also a completed goal. The board set a number of new goals at its board retreat in the spring of this year. Those new goals are to strengthen the existing police social worker program. That's something that we're working with public safety to do. To continue to increase diverse programming to the community. That's something we're working with our leisure services and community development department to do. Next was to increase programming in senior services. That's a goal that the board has set that we're beginning to work on. Next was revitalizing Cherry Hill Village. That's something that we've been working on internally with our partnership with Wayne County in the Canton Town Square project, as well as our partnership with the Village Arts Factory in Cherry Hill Village. And next was the creation of the town square at Cherry Hill Village.
I'm just wondering, maybe the board, do you want to comment on any of these under welcoming community?
Sure. Joe, the different increase in senior services in each column, I'm assuming the first one was programming and the second one is what we're doing at the summit and redesigning the space. Would that be true?
Yes, that's accurate. Yep.
Okay. And there was one other, but I can't remember. I'll let others go and I remember what it was.
Tanya?
It says about the creating resources in various languages, so that has been completed, or is it ongoing? Because do we have, when we talked about these in 2021, we talked about having them in the municipal services, like, different languages, and I don't know about the forms and things like that. Is it a work in progress, or is it already happening?
I believe some of it has already happened. It's a work in progress to the extent that, the languages that are spoken in Canton are changing. And I would let Director Norwood just speak directly to what's been accomplished already in municipal services with regard to having resources available to community members in various languages.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Supervisor. We are working within, certainly in the building inspection services, so we can, that's where our most exposure to the public is at. And so we have part of our hiring process, we've taken into effect, that we can have that folks who apply for jobs bring other things to the table that we can use or apply to work with our customers. That's one way. We're also looking at our forms on our language that we do for all different languages that are spoken in Canton.
Okay, thank
And
you.
if someone were to come to the counter and ask for a form in a specific language, they could print it out in that versus having a lot of printed out in various languages.
I understand.
Kate, go ahead.
So, Joe, as we continue with our completed goals, I mean, they're not something that we're done and they're gone now. They're something that we are continuing to implement. So I'm wondering again with the languages, as the population changes, are we monitoring that? And also, do we have resources for interpreters when we need someone for a face-to-face encounter.
I can tell you that our communications team does monitor the number of languages that are spoken in Canton. And so that's something that, they're kind of checking in on a regular basis. I know at the beginning of this year, there was some recognition that the number of languages had increased that were spoken in Canton just in 2023. So they were able to recognize that. In terms of interpreters being available, I don't know that we've made that service available to folks outside of our police department, which would use a service like that, taking a criminal complaint.
That's specifically what I was thinking of, but I'm sure there are other instances too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if municipal services uses an interpreter or fire department uses an interpreter when necessary, but I would think that the fire department certainly does, but I'm not sure about municipal services.
We aren't at this point, though. That is something that the new super, the building official is looking at those things because he's run into some issues with some community members on this point.
Okay, thank you.
I remembered my question. The communications needs assessment, so we've completed that. Have we started making any changes in communications besides translation services? So.
Yes, we, the board voted to reorganize a couple of different departments a few months back when creating the community development department. And one of the departments that was reorganized was communications. Communications went from being kind of dispersed throughout different departments in the township to centralized in the supervisor's office. And so that change was made. Our communications manager is working on a strategic communications plan for the entire township. She's been working diligently on that for several weeks. I believe some board members have been involved in that. We certainly welcome more participation in that process as it moves forward. But that strategic communications plan will be, I think, helpful in guiding communications efforts throughout the township in the future once that's completed.
Okay, thanks. Next page.
Okay. The next goal area or kind of value system that the board really wanted to establish for the township in 2021 was creating a healthy ecosystem throughout the township. There were a number of goals that the board set to create a healthy ecosystem throughout the township. The first was reducing the carbon footprint through alternative energy. We certainly started that by purchasing more efficient appliances throughout the township that are more energy efficient. Our police department made a large order for hybrid vehicles, which is still waiting to be filled due to the vehicle shortage. But there's movement there. The township purchased its first electric vehicle. And so there have been a number of things that have been done to reduce that carbon footprint throughout the township. The second was to create a healthy Ford Road landscaping with native plantings. That's something that was done in 2021. Third, established a food truck ordinance and additional outdoor dining. The board again accomplished that in 2021. As far as new and ongoing goals in this goal area, adding pocket parks to eliminate park deserts throughout the township. That's a goal for this year and for next year and into the future. And turning Ridge Road, the park area, Ridge Road and Ford Road into a nature area has now been accomplished. It wasn't at the time that the board had its retreat in the spring of this year, but the board has designated that area as ZB West Nature Area. And we'll have some future development in that area within the next year or two. Second new ongoing goal, updating the master plan with the Planning Commission. That is something that our Municipal Services Department is working diligently on and has been for about a year now. Third, expanding community and butterfly and rain gardens. That's a goal for the next 2 years. Fourth, extending the trail system and acquiring property along drains, creeks, and streams for additional green space. That's something that we're working on along with Trustee Snyderman, who's a part of that committee, to expand our trail system. Fifth, eliminating sidewalk gaps throughout the township, plan for non-motorized transportation throughout the township. The elimination of sidewalk gaps is an ongoing process. The board has committed substantial funding to the elimination of sidewalk gaps, and the first step in the process is the planning and the acquisition of right-of-way in certain areas where gaps exist, and we're in that process right now. With regard to the plan for non-motorized transportation throughout the township, that's something that will be a part of the master planning process. So that's going to be included in the township's next master plan. Next goal, promoting waste reduction and recycling through increased composting. The board has okayed a composting program throughout the township that's been a success. Next, dealing with climate, stormwater, and drainage in the community. That's something that our municipal services department is working on at the moment, I believe along with a private engineering firm, to create a stormwater plan for the township, an updated stormwater plan for the township. The firm is Wade Trim.
And on this one also, I mean, we obviously will continue to reduce carbon footprints as we can. We're also a member, we were awarded Michigan Green Communities from MML for all of our work there. And we continue, we're the gold standard, which is the highest standard there. Any questions or comments? Go.
I think one thing I want to remind the board of, while a completed goal is establishing the food truck ordinance, I think one of the areas where I'd like to see us focus is on making the food truck ordinance more user friendly. We've had it in place now for 2 years, and we've yet to fully license a food truck in Canton Township yet. So there's a disconnect between the ordinance itself and the business of operating a food truck in Canton Township. That's, I think, one thing that's at least important for me that we kind of, I know we've had a lot of food trucks in Canton Township. Obviously, the ones at Leisure Services events are exempt from the ordinance, but there's been a substantial amount of food trucks in Canton, though none of them have gone through the licensing process, which is important. That's why we kind of created the ordinance and put it in there. So that's one thing. And then two, the stormwater one is huge as well. I spent some time with the Canton Advocate today in my front counter with a resident who was frustrated about the stormwater drain behind her home. And while I was having that conversation, late for a meeting, a second resident approached my counter to talk about a ticket my office had put in for Wayne County to have debris removed from the drain behind his house that has now been unfulfilled for 1.5 months. So from the previous storm in August. So it was ironic, or it was poetic almost, that I had two residents at the counter at the exact same time dealing with stormwater, which is not an issue the clerk's office has jurisdiction over. Very important goal.
Definitely is. Anyone else? Kate?
Yeah. With the goal of dealing with climate, stormwater, and drainage in the community, I just wanted to follow up on a conversation I had with you, Joe, about wetlands ordinance. Have there been more thoughts on that?
I did have a conversation with somebody from the state about that. They were unaware of communities that have wetland ordinances that go beyond what Eagle mandates. However, I think it's probably worth exploring further with our law firm Foster Swift and seeing what we can put in place there.
Okay, thank you.
quality infrastructure.
Okay, so the next goal that the board set in 2021 was to have quality infrastructure throughout the township, and there were a number of action items associated with this goal. First was the establishment of a responsible contracting policy. That was put in place earlier this year. Second was continuing the Canton Roads program, including intersection improvements. The roads program has continued with the repaving of Canton Center Road last year, work along Warren Road. There may have been one or two other small roads that were worked on within the last year or so, as well as roads this year. Next goal is to ensure the township fleet includes hybrid or electric vehicles. I mentioned that earlier. The police department has been working on that, as well as the municipal services fleet division. Fourth was increasing communications from elected officials and staff to educate residents. We've been working diligently to increase that communication through newsletters, over social media, through email programs, and through a newly adopted software program that we're in the process of implementing right now called IndiGov, which will really help us communicate with residents better, both the township and the elected officials. Fifth is the addition of a fire inspector position. And sixth is the creation of the technology committee, which was accomplished as well. As far as new and ongoing goals that the board has set for this year and next year, one, to create a virtual option for conducting all business with the township. We refer to that internally as our ERP solution. And so our ITI department is working diligently on implementing a series of software programs that will create better options, better virtual options for residents in conducting business with the township through all departments. Second was increased transparency on public documents. Third, develop an electric vehicle charging plan, an alternative energy plan with the technology committee. We're working on that with a company called GreenSpot. Fourth was the Public Safety Administration renovation. That renovation has been worked on this year and is nearly completed. Fifth was the construction of a fourth fire station. We recently received funding from the state legislature to build the fourth fire station, and Chief Stockline is currently working on putting a plan together to do that, and is planning to come before the board on October 17th with a presentation of the plan to build the fourth fire station. And next is the creation of the Michigan Avenue Innovation Network with neighboring communities, and that's something that Supervisor Graham Hudak is working on every day with all the communities along Michigan Avenue between Detroit and Ann Arbor.
Any questions or comments? Tanya?
So Joe, where are we with the, the green spot? And, we had a plan, we had study sessions. So do we have an idea and when this is happening or moving forward?
Yes, I'll have Director Norwood give you an answer for that one.
So we have been working with GreenSpot. However, we ran into some issues about the federal money that the township's going to get from the EE's Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant dollars. Their model of putting in EV charging stations doesn't work with that funding source. So we're going to take that and go a different way with that funding source. And now we're doing there's two places they want to do. They want to put their charging stations, and we're going out for an RFP for the rest of the locations around the township that we want to locate EV charging stations. That probably hit the streets at the end of this month.
Do we have a time?
The timeline for it could happen within 6 months.
We had some businesses also along Ford Road that said they'd like to join with other businesses and start putting chargers on Ford Road in front of businesses. So that's a good sign also. And so they're paying attention to our quoting process.
Yeah, and just to kind of add a little bit to Director Norwood's statement on this, we were originally led to believe by GreenSpot that we would be able to use some grant funding that we had won to put, I believe, the first 2 chargers in. And then after further discussion with them, they indicated that we could not use the funds, and they could not use the funds in that way. And so we had to kind of create an alternative plan to get the first 2 chargers in, and as Director Norwood said, the RFP for the remaining locations is set to go out within the next 30 days.
Organizational climate and culture.
The next goal area is organizational climate and culture. So there's a lot of process goals in this area, a lot of township processes and procedures that the board was looking to make more effective and more efficient. First was the development of program inventories. That was something that we accomplished in 2022 through our partnership with ResourceX, which helped us in priority-based budgeting. Second was development and implementation of the organization-wide performance management system. Again, that was something that we worked hand in hand with ResourceX on. Third, assessing sourcing of township legal services. That was something that was accomplished at the end of 2021. Fourth, updating and centralizing the Treasurer's Office policies and procedures. Treasurer Slavens has updated those policies and procedures. Next was articulating formal service level standards and tracking key performance indicators for building and inspection services. Director Smith and when he was Deputy Director Norwood, worked on this and implemented new service level standards and performance indicators for building and inspection services. I believe it was late last year or earlier this year. Those got tied to some of the state standards around those issues. Next was to develop an IT governance infrastructure. That goal has been accomplished. Next was to create the ITI department. The board created that department in 2021. Next was to create a deputy supervisor position. That was accomplished. Next was to relocate and establish formal service legal agreements for facilities and maintenance staff, and that was accomplished in early 2022. There were also a number of other completed goals. If you look at the next column, create a Deputy Director of Municipal Services position. That was accomplished. David Norwood was hired. Next was to conduct an organizational impact assessment to determine resource requirements in the employee base. That was accomplished. Next was to evaluate the negotiating process and set goals for future contracts. That was accomplished as well. Next, to purposely strive for an inclusive workforce through policies, processes, and communications. That is an ongoing job, of course, but there have been some steps that have been taken to meet that goal. Next was succession planning. That's something that all the departments have been focusing on within the last 2 years, I think with more intentionality than probably ever before at the township. Next was to review the part-time wage scales. The board did that and approved the new part-time wage scale last year. Next was to add an additional records position. The board did that either end of last year or beginning of this year so that records can be monitored by the clerk's office. And then finally, the administration building renovations. Those, I believe, now have been completed. So those are the completed goals.
And then, of course, this continues on to the next page.
If you go on to the next page, the board has established some new ongoing goals for the next 2 years. The first is to establish an onboarding and communication process for the board. The onboarding is, for new employees. Our Human Resources Department is working on that right now with the Clerk's Treasurer's Office and Supervisor's Office. Next was to develop an outcome-based performance measurement program. That's something we're working on in the Supervisor's Office. Next was to develop an organization-wide workforce development and succession planning program. We have our first meeting on workforce development next Tuesday. So we have a subcommittee that's going to begin working on the issues connected to workforce development, like training and development and some of the other programs that support workforce development throughout the township. Next, clarify roles and responsibilities within Canton Township government. That's an ongoing goal. Updating and implementing the township's ITI strategic plan. That's an ongoing goal. I know it's something that Director Abegbu has looked at. He's got his hands pretty tied right now with the ERP process, but I know it's something he's looking to begin working on soon. Next, develop processes for work-life balance that allow flexible scheduling and work from home. That's something that will tie into the Workforce Development Subcommittee, looking at, things like, remote work and use of PTO and, things like that. Next, create and pass a living wage ordinance to establish standards for compensation. That's a goal that is ongoing. Facilities maintenance staffing deficiencies. That's something that we've been talking about addressing, in the near future. And then finally, succession planning and the increase in police staffing, something the board's been working on for the last couple of years, the increase in police staffing. And I believe we've finally gotten to a point where Director Ball feels somewhat comfortable with this staffing level in the police department.
Any comments? Okay, and then the last page is financial stability.
So in the financial stability section, the completed goals are, reviewing community programs and initiatives for cost and benefit. Again, that's something that we did through our partners at ResourceX when we went through the priority-based budgeting process. Every program and service in the township was scored and was rated by other departments for importance and efficacy and benefit. Second was conducting a water and sewer utility rate study to determine effective rates for covering operating and capital expenses. We actually did this internally with our municipal services and finance department instead of going external for the study. Next was to develop a comprehensive cost allocation plan to find clarity on the full cost of township operations. This is something that's been implemented by our finance department, attributing the true cost of every program and service in the township to the specific department it's connected to. And then finally, implementing priority-based budgeting. We're in our first full year of priority-based budgeting, and moving into year two. The board will hear a budget presentation on 2024 and 2025 on November 1st, and there'll be more discussion about where we're at with our budgeting process at that time. As far as new and ongoing goals, the creation of an economic development strategic plan for Canton Township. We have hired a new economic development manager, Gavin Beckford, who I believe is here tonight. Just raise his hands. There's Gavin. Everybody say hi to Gavin.
Hello, Gavin.
Gavin comes to us from the private sector, and we're very excited to have him in the economic development manager position here at Canton Township. He's already shared some really great ideas for economic development in Canton, and we'll be working over the next 6 months to a year to put the strategic plan together for economic development in Canton. Next, fostering strong partnerships with the business community to create a thriving economic base. Again, that's something that Gavin will be working diligently on through partnerships in the business community in Canton, membership-based organizations, and economic development initiatives that we have going on here in Canton. Next, preparing an annual budget document that meets GFOA best practices. That's something our finance department will work on. Fourth, developing a long-term financial plan for the township. That's another thing that our finance department will be working on. And then finally, the last two kind of go together, pre-funding pension costs and a policy on pre-funding pension costs. This is another item that came out of the board retreat in the spring that our finance department will be working to implement in the near future.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board about this goal? Stephen?
Yeah, thank you. Joe, the comprehensive cost allocation plan, the new budgeting methodology. Now that we've gone through that process, will there be recommendations on things to change, or perhaps programs, at least taking a look at programs from a financial point of view?
Yes, we'd like to do a study session with the board on kind of the outcomes that we found in going through the priority-based budgeting process. But I believe our finance department wanted to get through one full year of doing it, just to have a, kind of a better sense of how the process works. And, you know, there were a number of things that, a number of changes that the department needed to make in order to implement priority-based budgeting, in terms of not necessarily how they make a budget and forecast, but how that's analyzed, you know, after the budget is made and the forecasts are made. And so that will be the subject of a future study session with the board.
Okay, so we'll be able to take a look at maybe some scoring and how different things scored and just have discussion on that. and what it
Yes,
means.
absolutely. And just kind of by way of kind of a preview of that, one of the good things that came out of the PBB process was a recognition that the vast majority of budget dollars that are spent in Canton align very well with both the board goals and what the community says it wants from Canton Township. And that's, according to our vendor, Resource X, not the case in every community after they go through the PBB process. There are certainly some areas for improvement, but by and large, the spending seems to be pretty aligned with at least what the community says it wants.
Comments or questions? So we have coffee hours where we meet with residents, and that's important. That's once a month. We probably get a few coming in, and we hear your emails and things. But what we want to do is we're targeting in January to start taking this You Belong plan out to the residents. And more to come on that for times and dates. But we want to hear your views on what it's important to you and further goals and targets in Canton. So we'll be bringing more information as soon as we set that all up. Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. Thank you. So now we have Clerk Segers, who's going to conduct the Youth Advisory Council swearing-in ceremony.
Thank you for your patience, everybody. If you want to stand up, Youth Advisory Council, and come on up to the front, we'll get ready to do our oaths. That's the best way to go about doing this, and maybe we'll do it in out.
Our vice president this year is Anish. Our treasurer is Alia, and our secretary is Bikram. Our president is unfortunately absent today. But those are our officers who are present.
Congratulations. All right. Now, moving on to the consent calendar. Can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Madam Supervisor, I move that the board adopt the consent calendar as presented with item and only item C1. Consider increasing A3C CIP purchase order for Municipal Services Division.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Trustee Borninski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item G1, consider approval of sauna rebuild for Summit on the Park.
Madam Supervisor, I move to award a contract and approve a purchase order to Carpentry Concepts for an amount not to exceed $29,348.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Trustee Snyderman. The sauna at the Summit on the Park has never been fully replaced since first opening in 1996. The Municipal Services Facilities team has performed maintenance and repairs to benches when needed to avoid any injuries. The sauna, however, needs a complete renovation due to wear and tear over the course of the past 27 years. With the current closure and renovation of the aquatics area until December of 2023, it's an opportune time to complete the sauna rebuild. Director Norwood, do you want to add anything?
No, I don't have anything to add. I just note that John Zelinas, the facilities team manager, is here also to answer any questions, as he's been up to his eyeballs at the summit working on the projects over there.
Oh, great. Thanks. John, do you have anything to add? Stephen?
I was just wondering if it was something that we found money for, or was it part of a budget for next year, or we're bringing in, or what?
So I do have a fund inside of facility services that's allocated to unforeseen or items that we know we have to do, such as like this, or if it's a roof repair due to a leak. So we do have funds over there. I just did a capital reprogramming with finance department, and we have plenty of funds to account for this.
Anyone else? Yeah, the old sauna, it needed a lot of, I mean, they even had a lot of signs directing people what to do in the sauna. I mean, one of them, I hear everybody talking about a lot, where it said, do not sit on the stones. So obviously there were some things that were not safe.
What about the steam room?
Steam room is getting fully replaced with a pool project.
Okay.
Yep, so this was the only outlier that would be kind of hanging with the whole project. So figured it'd be a good time to take care of it.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. The next item is consider approval for FlexNet Communication Network for collection of water meter reading data.
Madam Supervisor, I move to approve a purchase order in the amount of $236,886 to Aetna Supply Company for the purchase of FlexNet Communication Network.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Treasurer Slavin. So Canton Township Water and Sewer Development started several years ago to install radio heads units, MXU, on all new construction and implemented the residential meter replacement program. Census meters and equipment were selected as the best option for the township, and Aetna Supply Company, Incorporated, is a lone supplier of Census products. In the past, Canton has purchased from Aetna Supply Company, a sole source supplier for Census meters and equipment. For this reason, we are requesting a waiver of the standard purchasing policy requirements to solicit bids. As part of this program, the next phase is to install FlexNet Communications Network. This will allow Canton to collect meter reads on a daily basis and remotely, which will improve operational efficiency and customer service, potentially reducing non-revenue water usage. Canton's 26,000 plus active water accounts, that's a lot of accounts, Treasurer Slavens takes care of, are now all equipped with radio read devices, which will allow a streamlined collection of meter data. Director Norwood, do you want to add anything?
No, well, yes, and we're very excited about the project, but I certainly can't take all the credit for this. Treasurer Slavens has been key to this project even before I even became part of the organization. So we're very excited about to kind of complete the meters project.
No, we're all very excited about it. DPW, everybody's worked very hard to get this going, and it'll be wonderful for our residents. Right now, we just read meters every other month, and if we notice a high read, we can let somebody know early on. And even with final reads and that, we can get them done right away. So it'll be helpful for both staff and also for our residents, very helpful for our residents. So looking forward to this.
Anyone else? Michael?
Just like to thank Treasurer Slavens for her leadership on this issue, David Norwood for his leadership, and the hard work from everybody else, the Treasury staff. It's cool when we innovate to make life better for residents in lots of small, subtle, simple ways that really make a big impact. So well done.
Anyone else? No, that's great. And it's, we know that you've been making calls telling people when you see something too.
Yeah, this is exciting. Just so I understand, today, some have radio meters, and how are they read today?
Right now, we have the guys go, DPW workers drive around.
So they can
And
read them remotely,
they-
but from the street or something
Right,
like?
from the
Okay.
van, they have yes. And then this will be a tower, and we'll be able to just right from,
So one tower or that,
right now, it'll be just one tower.
There'll be one, and there will be a backup too, the DPW to help.
but it can reach the whole
The whole, the
community?
township, yes. Mhm.
Great, thank you.
Big. Really big. Good job. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item G3, consider approval of the replacement of one AC condenser and one furnace for Human Services Building and one RTU for Fellows Creek Golf Course.
Madam Supervisor, I move to approve the contract and approve a purchase order for Can-Am Industrial to replace one AC condenser and one furnace at Human Services Building for $43,373 and one RTU at Fellows Creek Golf Course for $11,176 for a total purchase order of $54,549.
Support?
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Trustee Snyderman. MSD Facilities Department is recommending the following projects be awarded. Our township-owned Human Services Building is currently operating with without one of the five condensing units. Earlier this year, condensing unit number 4 at Human Services Building became inoperable, causing warmer temperatures for the upper-level suites. Additionally, we combined the Human Services project with RTU replacement for Fellows Creek Golf Course to achieve better pricing. RTU at Fellows Creek Golf Course services the maintenance shop. This unit is currently locked out due to a crack in the heat exchanger. Facilities is recommending the replacement of the RTU at Fellows Creek as it provides heat for the winter months. Also, operating an RTU with a crack in the heat exchanger can emit CO gases, which is very dangerous. The project above has gone through the request for proposal process, with the most qualified bidder being recommended for award and falls within the budget amount in the project. Director Norwood, do you have anything to add?
I do not have anything to add. However, John Zelias, the facilities team manager, is here also to answer any questions that we might have.
John works very hard on keeping everybody safe and warm and cool. Do you want to add anything, John? All right, great. Everyone in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item G4, consider approving a letter of agreement with the Canton Command Officers Association for the creation of 2 dispatch supervisor positions and associated amendments to the 2023 police and fire budgets.
Madam Supervisor, I move to approve the letter of agreement with the Canton Command Officers Association for the creation of 2 dispatch supervisor positions and the amendments to the 2023 police and fire budgets as listed above in budget implications and account numbers.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Trustee Brzezinski. The police and fire departments are requesting to create and fill 2 new dispatch supervisor positions to be part of the Canton Community Officer Association bargaining unit. These positions will replace the 2 now vacated public safety dispatch IT supervisor positions from the township's merit system. This request also includes amendments to the 2023 police and fire budgets for 2 months of salary and fringe benefits to accommodate the increase in salary from the formerly budgeted merit positions. And so we talked about this on the study session held on May 2nd, 2023. So Director Bauer and Director Stockline, do you have anything to add?
A few things. I think it's an excellent opportunity when we look at succession planning and, you know, the board goals, which we just covered too, with organizational climate and culture. This, I think it should be noted that our dispatch team, we've only had one legitimate retirement since 1978. And this provides an opportunity for movement in the organization and to maintain what's become one of the more professionalized positions over the last 30 years. So we thank you for your consideration. We thank the Deputy Supervisor and our Finance Department for help putting this together.
Thanks. Anyone else? Any comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. G5, consider approving the renewal agreement between Canton Township and Oakland County for IT services.
Madam Supervisor, I move to approve the renewal of an agreement between Canton Township and Oakland County for IT services, Clemis, and authorize Township Supervisor to sign all necessary documents on behalf of the township.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Trustee Snyderman. Public Safety is requesting to renew the agreement for IT services, specifically CLEMIS, which stands for Courts and Law Enforcement Management Information System, operated and maintained by the Oakland County Department of Information Technology. Fees associated with this agreement are budgeted as part of the department's annual budget process. So again, Director Bauer, Director Stockline, do you want to add anything?
Again, just a few items. This, as you see, the importance of it, we've been using this record management system for over 20 years. And on the law enforcement side, it helps us comply with an act from 1968. So we have so much data that goes through this system and is maintained. And our lean services go through this, our CAD services go through this. So your day-to-day or operations are critical with this agreement. This is a matter of course, too. We wanted the board to see all contracts, and this is a contract we've been signing for many years. And I just want to bring it forth to you today for you to see.
Director Stockline, do you want to add anything?
Just that we can't respond without it. That runs all of our trucks.
Thank you. Comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item C6, consider sale of Canton Township property and authorize supervisor to sign all documents necessary to close the sale.
Supervisor, I move to approve the purchase agreement to sell 2 vacant parcels located at 604 North Willard Road, Canton, Michigan, 48187, and authorize the supervisor to sign all necessary documents necessary to close the sale.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Treasurer Slavens. Canton Township resident Jennifer Williams approached the township seeking to buy vacant parcels of property behind her home located at 604 North Willard Road. After reviewing the parcels, the township made an offer to sell 2 vacant parcels directly behind her house as listed for $2,000 apiece for a total sale of $4,000. Joseph, do you want to add anything?
No, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Comments or questions? Summer?
Quick question. I know that we've sold quite a bit of property on the street behind homes. How much is left? Is there any left?
According to the resident who emailed us, there were 7 parcels that she was interested in originally. After reviewing the parcels that she was looking at and wanted to purchase, we settled on the sale of the 2 parcels. I believe it's 807 and 808 in the property descriptions, but 817 and 818.
Thank you.
Yeah, Joe, I'm not against it. I just couldn't tell where it was when we looked at the diagram and what was being sold.
Yeah, it's really small. You gotta kind of zoom
Tiny
in.
green
The
circle.
green oval.
Yeah,
You
there's
see
a
the
there's
green
a
oval?
yeah there's a. It's way on the
Right?
right. Yep.
Yep. I'll zoom
Um,
in more. If you look at the screen, always
on the
right,
west
so
end of Morton Taylor.
Okay, so that, I see, it backs to the unbuilt Morton Taylor Road. I gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, she was interested in buying more of the parcels, but some of them were already owned by others. We could put something together to kind of show you if you want to see.
Oh,
Yeah.
which ones are sold?
Right.
In the,
Yeah, I
okay.
was just curious.
Sure.
I know that we've sold quite a few of them. I just wasn't sure if there were any left.
I don't think any of these were vacant after that. She did want to look at some of these that were behind other people's property, and we kind of said, well, we want to leave that up to them to purchase.
I think they should have the right of first refusal at least.
Right. Some of it's open land.
Yeah, if you go down Willard Road, there's another homeowner who was able to acquire some of those old DNR plats behind other people's houses, and they cleared that forest and built some structures, and it upset some of the residents. And I feel like we talked about this in 17 or 18 about kind of really it's wise to just sell the parcels immediately behind someone's house. I will say the Willard piece is north of the ITC corridor. I do hope we kind of keep a policy of trying to keep those parcels, just because if there's ever an opportunity to extend Floatin Park, having those parcels is really cool for both trails to tie into the ITC or to expand. What's cool though is that there's not a lot of homes because the road doesn't go through. Willard doesn't go through, so.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item G7, consider acceptance of resignation and appointment to the Election Commission.
Madam Supervisor, I move to accept the resignation of Trustee Stephen Snyderman and appoint his replacement, Trustee Tanya Ganguly, until the term expiration of November 20th, 2024.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seegers and really supported by Trustee Snyderman. Charter Township Act MCL 42-4 indicates that the Board of Township Election Commissioners for each township is to be composed of township clerk and 2 trustees appointed by the Township Board. Do you want to add anything, Clerk Seegers?
Nope.
All right, all those in favor of the motion?
I
He
do
wants
want
to.
to, yeah.
Let Stephen do his swan song.
Yeah. Just to be clear, I'm just leaving the election committee, not the Board of Trustees. I wasn't sure if that was clear in the actual motion. The election committee has been a great place to learn about elections over the last 7 years. And Michael, you've been a great instructor, teacher in that area, and it's actually quite interesting in terms of learning about our equipment and how safe it is and doing tests and things like that. So I've really enjoyed my time on it, but I think it's time to give opportunity for others to do the same. So I know, Tanya, you'll be a great keeper of our elections, so congratulations.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Stephen was very happy when he called me and asked if I would volunteer to do it. He was ecstatic.
Okay, now I take back everything I said.
I will warn both of the 2 election commissioners. We will be calling an election commission meeting extremely soon, and it is the most robust agenda we've ever had so far. I believe we have 9 agenda items. So the August 27th presidential preference primary has begun, which is part of the reason why we have 3 RBAs about elections on tonight's board member meeting. So we are getting our early voting plan ready for that election, and it is required to be submitted to the county by October 25th. So it begins, and I'll be reaching out to you tomorrow about scheduling our first election commission meeting.
Great. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item G8, request approval of resolution establishing Village Arts Factory and the Summit as early voting locations.
Madam Supervisor, I move that the board adopt the attached resolution establishing Village Arts Factory and the Summit as early voting locations, whereas Proposal 22-2 has enacted early voting in the state of Michigan, and the Charter Township of Canton shall provide a suitable early voting site for each precinct located in the municipality. Whereas election studies have helped identify locations according to voting populations within the township, and whereas Village Arts Factory and the Summit are equitably distributed to handle early voting traffic, now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Charter Township of Canton does hereby establish Village Arts Factory and the Summit as early voting locations for the presidential primary, February 27th, August primary, August 6th, 2024, and the general election, November 5th, 2024.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seegers, supported by Trustee Snyderman. On November 8th, 2022, the voters of the state of Michigan passed Proposal 22-2, enacting early voting. The Charter Township of Canton has a legal responsibility to provide a suitable early voting site using election studies and voter population maps. The Village Arts Factory and the Summit have been identified as equitably distributed to handle early voting traffic. Clerk Seegers, you want to comment some more?
If the board remembers, we had a special agenda item session on Proposal 2 implementation because there were a number of impacts. We went over kind of the budgetary requests, which is one of the other RBAs. But in that early voting plan that I had initially created, we had used GIS data to determine the location of our drop boxes, and we also did that to determine the location of our early voting sites. It was determined that we should do 2 early voting sites in Canton, not for the February election or the August election. It's not necessarily, demand won't warrant it necessarily to have 2 for those elections. We will definitely need 2 locations for November. But voters are creatures of habit, and we wanted to establish the same rules for November for the other 2 elections. So that's part of the reason we went with 2 locations. The Summit is a fantastic location, and the Summit staff has been phenomenal to work with, and so has facilities in helping look at security upgrades and additionally accommodating us doing voting in Arts 2, which is one of the arts rooms of the Summit, and we will be there for 9 days. For all 3, for the first 2 elections. Our goal would be to do 14 days for November of early voting. And then again, the Village Arts Factory, the board has recently purchased or begun the process of purchasing the Village Arts Factory property. We are also in the process of developing a lease for that property. And that location was not the initial location that was going to be determined for early voting. We had initially wanted the corner building, the yet to be named, actually the True Factory. But that will be under construction with the county for the Cherry Hill Village project, for the Town Square project. So we'd initially looked at that building as the long-term early voting site. We will obviously can't do early voting in an active construction site. And then the township owns property in Cherry Hill Village, so we had initially then looked at the Village Theater. But that would be too disruptive to programming at the Village Theater to be doing 9 days of early voting. So then we looked at the schoolhouse, but the schoolhouse is also going to be under construction as a part of the Village Square project next year. And so that left us with kind of really one additional building. And we looked at Canton Human Services, but that's also going to be under construction. At least the square, well, there'll be no parking there. So the 4th and final location in the village was determined that it would be the actual, what has been called the Village Arts Factory, but is actually the warehouse at the Village Arts Factory. Those are the kind of the 2 early voting sites. We want to keep them for all 3 elections. And yeah. The end. I can answer any questions.
Kate?
Yeah, Clerk Seegers, initially when we were talking about using the warehouse for early voting, you had some concerns about storage space. Have you figured that out yet?
No.
Okay.
I still have the concerns. However, we are finding ways to temporarily mitigate those in a cost-effective way. We've been in talks with the Partnership for the Arts and Humanities, which is the current owner, at least for the foreseeable future, but will ideally be the principal leasee of the facility, of taking one of the existing facilities and using that for internally for the storage, and that would save us the cost of modifying the building. The board had initially approved $15,000 essentially for upgrades for security, which really was chain of custody security. It was not physical site security from an active threat. It was chain of custody security. How do you maintain the ballots, the equipment? So they would be losing one of their studios for rental income, but we could take over part of that for storage. We would then just have to. We're probably going to be bringing forward a request for some equipment that will allow us to kind of secure things inside of that facility as opposed to securing the actual room or building itself. But we're working with some people at the state to kind of go through what the guidance would be, what the best practices are for a practice that's never been done before.
Okay, thank you.
Summer.
Actually, I have two questions. So my first question is, will voters be assigned a specific early voting site, or could they go to either one?
Any voter in Canton Township can go to any early voting site.
Okay. And my other question is, will Canton Township be partnering with any other municipalities on these early voting sites?
No, it was, we will not. We are just administering it at the local level for early voting. Primarily, nobody's reached out to partner, and it's not economically, there's no economic incentive to partner. Canton Township, I mean, essentially, the only reason you would partner is if you're too small to administer on your own. Or you can't, and because we're so big that we're actually having two sites, we're one of the few locations. I'd say there's probably going to be 4 locations in Michigan, maybe 5, that will have more than one early voting site. Livonia has more registered voters than us, even though they have a smaller population, and that's primarily just because of the age of the community of Livonia. It's a substantially older community than Canton. They are doing it at one early voting site, which will be fine for February and for August. I was uncomfortable with potentially putting 2,000 people through one facility over an 8-hour period. To me, that's a recipe for 2 to 3 hour long lines, which is just something I think was, our standard was the 30-minute line. So because we're doing multiple sites, there's no incentive for us to partner. We would have partnered if perhaps the Plymouths wanted to, or the problem is adjacent to Canton, you have Plymouth Township with a population of 30,000, Van Buren Township with a population of 30,000, and then Westland with a population of 85,000. You can't cross-county partner. So I had hoped to see like maybe Plymouth Township and Plymouth City partner, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But yeah, I'm unaware of anybody in Wayne County who is partnering.
Thanks. I know in some counties, like they're having county-wide early vote sites, so I was just wondering what was happening. Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item G9, consider first reading of an amendment to Chapter 14, Animals in the Canton Township Code of Ordinances regarding dogs in parks and dog licensing.
Madam Supervisor, I move to introduce the first reading of an amendment to Chapter 14 of the Canton Township Code of Ordinances and approve the attached resolution establishing a 3-year dog license fee of $25.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seegers, supported by Trustee Borninski. Wayne County has passed a resolution to allow local jurisdictions to issue 3-year dog licenses in an effort to increase efficiency, reduce costs, and provide for resident convenience. The clerk's office would like to begin issuing these licenses. A request of charging $25 would result in a $5 savings to dog owners. Additionally, the current ordinance regulating dogs in Canton is not in compliance with state law. To bring it into compliance, amendments for service animals and rabies requirements are proposed. Clerk Seegers, do you have anything to add?
Pardon me. I just, we're really doing three things with this ordinance. One, being allowed to offer a 3-year dog license, which is only for a dog that is licensed, that is vaccinated for rabies with a 3-year vaccination, which is a huge convenience for if you're a dog owner, and convenience for the clerk's office. 2, we are removing some extra legal language from our ordinance that allows for a rabies exemption, which is not allowed for in state law. So, and then third, our dogs in parks ordinance. We had language in there from a previous law that was amended in 2015 around specifically service animals. And so we are cleaning up that section of the ordinance so that we can be in compliance with state law. Your dog licenses and following the law. Those are the kind of the two main takeaways.
Questions or comments? Diane?
Want to thank the clerk's office for doing the 3-year dog license. I know that's something that many residents have been asking for, so, you know, we really appreciate it. I know it's a lot of work trying to get that all together, but thank you for doing that.
Stephen?
Michael, will 1 year still be an option, or are they all 3 years?
Correct. It is, so like, if you own a dog, you have to have it licensed because it has to be vaccinated. And so puppies, if your dog's not one, it can't have a 3-year rabies vaccine. So every dog in its first year of life will need to get a 1-year license. And then there's a point where a dog will get so old that it can't handle the 3-year it's just too much vaccine for their aging bodies. And so younger dogs and older dogs will probably be required to have 1-year licenses, but that'll be at the direction of a vet and the owner. And then anybody who's like, I really like showing up to the clerk's office and doing a 1-year license can keep doing it. And unlike the Secretary of State's office where you can do 2 years of registration fees, we're going to save $5. You're going to get a savings too. So instead of $30 for 3 years, it's $25 for 3 years.
Sounds good.
Any other questions? Nope. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item G10, consider the approval of a budget adjustment to purchase early voting materials and equipment.
Madam Supervisor, I move to create a purchase order, Dominion, in an amount not to exceed $58,000 for the purchase of 8 ImageCast Precinct 2 tabulators and approve the following budget adjustment.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Trustee Snyderman. In the 2022 general election, Michigan voters passed Proposal 22-2, which enacted many changes in the election process and its timeline. When the Clerk's Department was initially creating their budget for 2023, this legislation didn't exist. Therefore, the current budget is not sufficient to cover the purchases needed to accommodate the changes. Clerk Segrist?
We met with finance, and I'm extremely grateful to the finance team and the budget team for helping us navigate what is sometimes a very scary process, which is having to figure out how you're going to pay for things that you're legally required to do now, but you did not budget 2 years ago when we were building these budgets. So they were super helpful. We were able to accelerate a lot of costs. We were able to absorb a lot of costs because we did not have any elections this year in the existing elections budget. That was awesome. Unfortunately, there's still some outstanding expenses. So we looked at this and made a determination that of the total cost of it, estimated costs, which is about $175,000 extra, we can still absorb about $110,000 before we kind of exhaust the elections budget this year. So the remaining $65,000 we would want to take from contingency. This is not from the reserve funds. This is not from fund balance. This is from contingency, which was a recommendation of finance. And specifically, we need the $58,000 of which would go towards Dominion voting systems. Yeah.
In the recent budget that was signed, there was about $177 million requested from the Secretary of State's office to implement Proposal 2. Is any of that money, are we able to recoup any of this money through that?
Excellent question. Yes and no. A substantial amount of this request is going to be reimbursable, regardless of that of the appropriation in June, because a little secret is that the presidential preference primary is we build a state for that, and they reimburse us. So every time we have that third election, we always get income back. It does take a little while. That said, of the appropriation request, $35 million specifically is designed for facilitating early voting and Proposal 2 implementation. It will not be enough. We do not know what will be recovered yet. I was appointed to the Secretary's Prop 2 implementation task force, and we are meeting next week for our first inaugural meeting. I'm very excited about that. And I did give them a solicited partially and unsolicited partially proposal on how they should divvy up the $35 million. It is going to be a competitive process, but we should get some of this money back, but it will be through a reimbursement. So we've got to budget the money, we've got to spend the money, and then we've got to apply for the money to be reimbursed to us. I imagine a substantial amount of the payroll will be reimbursed at $15 an hour. And I imagine the cost of some of the tabulators that we've put in here. So that PO for Dominion, which is $58,000, is to cover the cost of 6 or 8, I think. Let me look here. ICP2s, which is the brand new ImageCast precincts. Those are the brand new tabulators. Those they're faster. So if you voted in person, it takes typically 9 to 10 seconds for it to process the ballot. That'll be a 2-second process now. So it'll be a faster process in the precinct. So yeah, hopefully those 6 ICP2 tabulators in their bins, so about 38,700 of that 58,000 could be reimbursed, and they're going to reimburse us for the drop boxes and some of that stuff too. So we've got some money coming. It's a process sometimes getting that money back.
Thank you. I think it's fortunate that Canton was in a position to be able to absorb the money and wait for the reimbursement. I imagine that this will create hardship for some other communities. But
Yeah, and if I can, real quick, I want to thank this board because I have experienced little to no resistance from the board itself, from township administration, because you all see the benefit and the value in complying with the will of the voters. I will tell you, this is not the case around the state of Michigan. Most of my colleagues are running into severe resistance, which is going to be a challenge for them. And it really pits election officials into a really difficult spot because we have a constitutional mandate. We have to do this job. And it's substantially more expensive now to do it. And I haven't had those problems. I'm very spoiled by having a pro-voter board of trustees. So I'm extremely grateful and an administration that also supports it. So thank you.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Great. Next, we have public comment for 3 minutes on any item you'd like. I'm going to look online. We have 4 people online. If you want to give public comment, please raise your hand, and I'll call on you. Not seeing public comment. No public comment online. Okay, great. Anybody in the room, public comment, please come to the podium, state your name, 3 minutes, your input, and we'll take it up.
Yeah, George Miller. I asked here a few weeks ago, when water main breaks, who pays for that water? I never got an answer to that. For example, if it breaks at 10 o'clock at night, DPW is gone, you call the police department, they don't know where to shut it off. And it's run to 10, 12 o'clock the next day. A lot of water goes down that 4-inch pipe or bigger. That's the main water main on some streets. I'd like a reply on that. Been keeping track of things here a little bit. correct me if I'm wrong, there was $84,000 bought on a lot by Pizza Hut at Ford Road in Sheldon, correct? Am I right or wrong? Township bought it for what reason? I'd like that answered. Also, there was a fire down at Yost Road and Sheldon Road. Paper, everybody, you guys want recycling. There was a paper facility there caught on fire. 10,000 gallons in a tractor trailer, it's hauling gas, or sometimes 13,000. Those tanks over there hold 50 to 100,000. If that would have caught on fire, it's still been burning. And do you have enough? When these recycle places come in, do you still have enough in it? That happened to be on Van Buren's side of the road. Center of the road splits right there. Yost Road's a dividing line. I'd like to know, we asked for the Mr. Evans to clean up Van Buren Road from Canton Center Road all the way to Hannon Road. That's never been addressed, or cleaning up any kind of program to pick up trash from the trash haulers. Evidently, they're not responsible for that stuff when it falls off the truck. Couple other things. I'd like to know, and it's been settled years ago, when there's no power and there's a shortage at your residence, evidently if the summit has power, you can come. Am I correct? You have an answer for that? If the power's on and the summit's open, you can come over there and stay to run medical equipment. A lot of people need to do that. You're for senior citizens, but you know, I happen to be the one that got caught in the bind that day. So, also, I'd like to know, there's been, what, 10 or 15 million to revamp the summit? Awful expensive copper roof, which could have possibly been a metal roof. That was on a study session over some period of time, 10 or 15 million. So I'd like to know where all this money's going. One last question. You bought it, and I didn't get the details exactly on it, how it's worked, but you bought the art center out there for $2.8 million. Do you know if it's on a floodplain, like I mentioned in the study session? Did anybody check into that? And guess what? The creek runs within 50 or 100 feet of that place. So when you have a big rain, or 100-year rain, and Mr. Evans out here, and the county doesn't want to clean the ditches, and it's their responsibility, then it's going to flood. I'd like to know about my tax money, where it's going.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else in the room? No? Okay. Public comment is over. We'll go to staff comments before we end the meeting. Any staff comments?
Real quick, from the police, I just want to thank you. Some of the actions taken by this board and HR department have been real fruitful. We've been real successful with our recruiting and the applicants coming into the police department. So I just want to give an update to the board and the audience. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Any board comments? Start with Tanya.
There is a fall festival at Cherry Hill Village, the Cherry Hill School this Friday. And, I think it's there next week too.
It was last Friday and it's this Friday.
So I see Michael with his children posting fun pictures. I really wanted to go probably go this week. It's the Free Press Marathon weekend. My family will be participating in the international half, so we'll see if we can beat last year's.
Yeah, good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you. Summer?
It is Breast Cancer Awareness Month and also Mental Health Awareness Day.
Thank you. Michael?
I have already talked a lot at this meeting.
Thanks. Kate?
Just wanted to acknowledge that yesterday was Indigenous Peoples Day, and also say happy Thanksgiving to our neighbors across the Detroit River from us. They had their Thanksgiving last week.
Thank you. Stephen?
Well, I was going to mention Indigenous Persons Month. I thought maybe we might still do a proclamation for that. Maybe at the next meeting, I'll be glad to write one up, so. And Michael talked a lot at this meeting. It's just-
Doesn't he
I second that.
Doesn't he always talk a lot?
But it was good stuff, so.
Thanks, Diane.
A quick reminder with the days getting shorter, as we're driving to and from, making sure we're watching out for children because this is a time of the year where unfortunately accidents happen more so. And another reminder with the weather getting colder, just if folks could remember to turn their water spigots off so that they don't have any lines starting to break, that's real important because the weather is getting quite cold.
Thank you. And another reminder of GFL, so your yard waste pickup is on your regular garbage day. So it's no longer on the weekends. So remember that. We've tried to let everyone know that. Our leisure services team isn't here, so I'll just let you know what's happening. So on October 21st, there's going to be a trick-or-treat story trail from 1 to 5 p.m. So you have to pre-register for a time slot so we don't have like 1,000 kids at the same time, and that's always a lot of fun. On October 14th from 3 to 5 is the Boo Bash. So if you're 7 to 12, you're invited to the Boo Bash. Again, you have to pre-register for that so we make sure that we have a comfortable amount of people in the room. And we also had the Howling at the Moon. So that was a lot of fun, a lot of dogs at the dog park. And our YAC team that was here, the youth development, they're trying to do a survey. If you can go online, they want people 18 and under to take a survey to help shape youth development in Canton. So there's a youth needs assessment online on Leisure Services by the Youth Advisory Council. All you have to do is scan it if you're under 18, and they want to hear from you to see how you can improve Canton for the youth in Canton. Okay, great. Yes.
I just wanted to add that the Canton Historical Society is doing the ghost stories on the 21st in the evening at Preservation Park, and some of us will be reading ghost stories, so come by and enjoy some cider and donuts.
Be a lot of fun. We'll scare you. All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Trustee Foster. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Meeting's adjourned.